Hello, let me show you the basics of Bondaweb first. The really important thing is how you buy it, the width, and how we use it basically. So to buy it, normally you would buy it in a haberdasher's. Your local superstore will have different types of Bondaweb. You can buy it in strips this wide with the backing paper on for the kind of things we're going to be doing it for the film, or you can buy it in strips to put up the hems of your trousers, but really you should use a needle and thread for that. If you really get into it, you'll buy it by the metre, this wide, or if you really want to have a lot of fun, 90 centimetres fun. It's really good fun to work with and you get into a real mess when you start to paint it. Let me just show you what you're actually buying. You're actually buying a web of glue on backing paper. And this is what it looks like off the roll. The backing paper is underneath and the web of glue is very, very fine and on the top. And what you need to do when you start to work with Bondaweb is just start to feel and get used to the fact that it's smooth underneath with the paper and rough on the top, which is the sticky side. One of the major things we have to be concerned about is when we use baking parchment, which is vital to this process because it's non-stick. You can get a brown one or a white one. The white one is more easily available. And this is the same colour as the Bondaweb. One of them's sticky and one of them isn't. So you need to concentrate on what you're doing. While you're having fun, have fun, but just bear in mind, this is Bondaweb, this is baking parchment. For a product that's so simple, you can create some amazing projects, from very basic applique on t-shirts, through wonderful patchwork quilts, all of which can be washed, through painted projects with the Bondaweb. You can iron onto wood, create amazing textures, but basically my main love is just painted Bondaweb. Now I'm going to show you how to do basic applique. Applique for t-shirts, patchwork quilts, all kinds of things that you need to wash. Bondaweb is fantastic for. It's guaranteed washable, providing you don't paint it. We're not going to paint it for this particular project. I've hand cut some shapes, just basic hearts. And the process is basically, you can see the shapes I've cut from here. And this is just silk fabric ironed onto the rough side of the Bondaweb. So you remember I showed you the web of glue on the top of the backing paper. You iron your fabric onto the Bondaweb rough side up with baking parchment. Then you cut out your shapes. You can see the shapes here. This is a t-shirt I've started to decorate. Keep it nice and tidy, Kim. You pop your t-shirt onto your ironing surface. I tend to use a towel on a table because it's nice and firm. Bondaweb is a nightmare if you get it onto your iron or your ironing board cover. You need to be very careful. Always make sure you've got baking parchment underneath your work and between your work and the iron. You'll see as I work through the film how I use it. So we have little Bondawebbed appliqued shapes. I'm just going to take the backing paper off and iron it on. Where you decide to put it is totally up to you. You can overlap it, use it singly. Your design is totally up to you. You could just stack them up if you wanted to. I'm probably just going to spread them out. In fact, I might overlap and be arty. So it's very simple. You just peel the backing paper off, mind your little bits. Use your baking parchment to protect your work and just make sure there aren't any little bits of Bondaweb sticking out. And then you just use your iron off steam between wool and cotton, sort of veering towards cotton. Obviously all irons are different. Pop your iron down safely and then peel your baking parchment off, and there you have your t-shirt. That is totally washable now. If you wanted to embellish that with stitch or put some zigzags around the outside, you could obviously do that, but that's just basic applique. I've hand cut these hearts, as you can see from my very basic shapes, but you can also use a die cutting machine if you have one, or hole punches. Because the Bondaweb has got a paper background, it supports the work as it goes through a hole punch, so you can cut out all kinds of fancy designs. And applique is a great way for using up all your old fabrics. One thing you have to watch, obviously, if you're working with t-shirts and anything to wash, your fabrics need to be washable. But I'm sure we have lots of gorgeous fabrics to play with. So here's a sample of cottons onto a grey t-shirt. There's a little heart-shaped heart cotton fabric on a little baby grow. And this is some transfer printed satin that I had in one of my many bags of fabric. And this is just acetate satin that's been transfer printed with Bondaweb ironed onto the back. And you can see that this has gone through a die cutting machine. And you have the positive shape here and you have the negative shape here. There's always a good chance to actually try out your design skills when you're working with shapes and removing shapes from an area. You don't have to stop at working on fabrics and t-shirts. You can also iron Bondaweb onto hard surfaces, which I'll be covering a little bit later in the film. But this is again the same fabric that you can see there, the transfer printed satin with Bondaweb on the back and then ironed onto a book cover with baking parchment.